Here. Hey, good evening. This is Ken and Joe at Tortoise Capital with the Creativity 202 check-in for January 23rd. Joe is on lessons 17 and 18. We briefly hinted at them last week, so we'll just pick up wherever you're ready, and then I'll cover the things that I have to cover. I had about a 90-minute session yesterday, and for some unknown reason, and there was no signal that it had happened, but about the last 20 minutes of it had been didn't record. It just cut right off. And I don't know why. But it was kind of a technical presentation on the use of the ADX as a measure of strength of trend with statistics. I call it the ADX stat. And then also the MACD histogram, 4 seasons, a way to really understand how to use that thing properly. And so I'll probably end up recording that later tonight. We'll see how that goes. That's a current work in progress. Oh, and I started my Tom Hardison and I we started a professional development seminar with a gal who teaches how to turn your personal professional knowledge into publishable tips, how to render it down, into its most basic essence, down to the principles, and then how to use that to multiply your message in many different ways. So it's really about making good artifacts with the things that you know. And she's very skilled at that. And we had our first session today, and it was I basically, in a 2-hour session, was able to completely outline book number 2.
Excellent.
And it's going to combine both true storytelling and systems thinking, which is nice because I just had some work published in True Storytelling Handbook, and I'm starting on Thursday an annual certification program to be an advanced facilitator for the Water Center on systems thinking. It's just a credential I want to add. I have to go through, 12 courses or 12 lessons once a month for the next 12 months to get that certification. But when I do that, I'm going to be able to write curriculum that awards a certificate from the Water Center to whoever takes it. They can say, hey, I got a continuing education credits certified by the Water Center. And as an advanced facilitator, my word is good enough to say that they will certify it, which is pretty cool. So I'll be able to do that for the Army, and then also for traders, and then for the doctoral students that I coach. So looking forward to doing that one on Thursday. Gives me something to do. Since I'm off the teaching team because of the heart surgery recovery, I'm just kind of on the sidelines right now as a 6-man, and they haven't needed me. So I'm just kind of spinning my wheels. So these 2 certifications are going to help me fill in the time usefully. And that's my work in progress this week. I hope. Over to you, Haas.
I'm doing well. Looks like I'm going to close on a house on Friday, so I'm pretty comfortable with how everything's fallen into place on this, and just getting all the details done. As you know, things pop up at the last minute on a house that waste your time, and I've been able to deal with that with a really good attitude this week. And I had never really communicated much with the city of St. Augustine and some of their public works departments and things, and made some inroads in there and said, wow, it's been a while since I was in this, because at one point I was building office condos and things in addition to managing other people's money. a few minutes later, the phone rings and it's the youth sailing center up the road asking me if I have any interest in helping them get their new dock permitted and fire coded properly, which would involve dealing with a bunch of city folks. So um, I'm excited to jump in and help with that. And a couple minutes later, someone else called me and asked me if I wanted to be on the audit committee for the sailing center. So I said yes to that too, just to kind of come out of my cocoon a little bit and force myself to be a little bit more of a collaborator. And I could say that would be a work in progress for me that sort of evolved out of this creativity course. I've always been a loner, and I've had months where I have not spoken a word in my life, actually, more than once. And it was just a personal challenge for some reason back in the 80s. And I thought that was okay because I was doing some inner work at the time, but it made me a little bit weird, to be honest with you. And I'm glad I came out of that. I also had a friend visit me last year who's been essentially living in a RV conversion in the desert for the last year, and he's gotten a lot weirder sitting in the desert. So I'm encouraging him to
Yeah.
collaborate and get out there. And I'm doing okay. Sort of the end of lesson 17 is a check-in on where you are, but I'm putting it up front just to say that I'm making good progress on all fronts. But I am still a little bit log jammed, and it's okay because I feel like I'm pushing up against a ceiling that I can break through here. And
Yeah.
the key at this point is persistence, consistency, clear thinking, focus, and then I'll throw collaboration in there too, so
Yeah.
it's
I'd
been good.
invite you to think about, in lesson 17, there's a picture of Celia, the chimp.
Yeah, I have some notes on that.
Yeah. And I would invite you to think about adding selfless service to others in there as sort of an alternative purpose for the work. Take some time to look outward as well as the first five or six things that you talked about right there were kind of inward focused, doing the work, being clear, being focused, all inner centric point of view. And that little picture of Celia reminds us that there's the outer world to contend with, to account for. And if you're feeling like you're coming to like if you're feeling log jammed, I would also think about that as the 2 hour battle drill of resistance that you're coming into, that you're planning for that, and you've moved into that region where it's muddier and it's harder to get traction, and that's coming into the station, and you can almost over focus on that as you want to be careful coming into the dock. I mean, that's the most dangerous part of the journey, probably, is as you're coming up to that fixed obstacle. You want to punch a hole in the side of the boat or something. So we can almost become overly focused with that, but we got to remember, oh yeah, well, there's also lessons 19 through 30 and beyond, and the outer purpose of the next sets of applications. So I would think about some of that stuff too.
Yeah, I
As
appreciate those points.
looking over the wall. That's what I would say. Look over the hedge or look over the fence.
Fair enough. And my thoughts on Celia, the chimp, um, are that my opinion of that picture is based on all of my past experiences, not yours. And so I have my own thoughts about it. But if I look at it when I'm at peace, I see oneness and I see an acknowledgement of evolution there. So, that's a big thing for me right now because my health has been semi questionable. And I guess that's part of why I'm looking inward because I'm accepting responsibility for the situation I'm in. And my cardiologist keeps asking me great questions, but like, what's eating you, Joe? Or the other day when we were talking about my screwed up feet, he said, "What are you running from, Joe?" So it's got me doing an awful lot of
Yeah.
introspection. And you're right, maybe there's a bit of imbalance there. Lesson 18 talks about conflict, and my inner world versus my outer world is a good example of that. And I see our inner worlds as just vast wilderness that so many people get lost in, including myself from time to time. So, um, but the chimp, it stirs a lot of thoughts in me, and acknowledging evolution is kind of a big one because this whole lesson was sort of about human evolution, and I love the phrase that we tend to mean reverse and we tend to have revolutions or breakouts, and in comparing the evolution of society almost to markets here. I mean, the analogies, markets as a metaphor for life, can't get away from it. Evolution, it all ties together for me. It's all cyclical, it's all expanding in every direction, and it's continually improving, whether we like it or not, even in an election year, um, where we have other conflicts going on. But another thing that comes into the sort of the journaling of this is one question for Ken. And, I kind of took that as, hey, this is a little bit of a different opportunity to ask some different questions. So I'm going to hold off on asking that question until I think of one or maybe more than one that I really can tap into your insight and experience on. And
Oh, for sure. You can play that card anytime you want.
Okay.
You got this far through the course and you're
Um,
over the tipping point because you're past 15. So yeah, you
a
can ask
couple
that
of
question whenever.
couple of things. One thing I might mention is that back at the beginning of the owl group thing, when you first posted that as a, hey, I'm not sure where this is going, but sign up and we'll make good out of it. I submitted a couple of dreams to be run through the koala chat GPT mill. And if you don't mind, I wouldn't mind if you're still doing that, perhaps me resubmitting those, and let's,
Yep.
okay,
Easy to do. We've got a lot of
because,
capacity. We got a lot of unused capacity in koala. So
okay.
that's unbounded. You can do that as much as you like.
It was just interesting to me that these two dreams sort of governed my early years in life, and not necessarily in a good way. And there was a hell of a lot of running in the second one. So, in answering my question, what am I running from? I wouldn't mind knowing if I have some deep seated things that I can work on. I'm not looking for answers. I'm just looking for more assignments out of the information I get from it.
Something I'd invite you to think about. Let's try this. So imagine that you have practiced telling the story about the dreams enough times that you really felt comfortable that you'd captured the essence of exactly how you remember it, how you think about it, how you see it and feel it, because you're familiar now with telling the story of that dream. So, and now imagine you had three different doors, and behind each door was a particular personality, an analyst, an artist, a mystic, whatever it may be, any personality that you could imagine whose insight about that dream would be of interest to you for any reason. Why would it be interesting? Well, you don't have to have a reason. You would just find it interesting. So imagine you could create three different stereotypical points of view or representative points of view from different parts of the spiritual compass. Like you could say, hey, create the persona of Timothy Leary. Yeah, just pick one, or Carl
Mhm.
Jung. probably a better one. Create the a psychotherapist with the qualities and the background and the point of view of Carl Jung, and have that personality interpret the dream from that point of view. What would they say? What kind of questions would they ask? What angles would they be looking for? What kind of themes are common to that method? So I could imagine if it was me, for example, I would say Carl Jung, Socrates, and maybe Confucius or Li Po, the famous
Mhm.
drunken Chinese poet, was legendary for his Taoist impressionistic poetry, very self-centered, almost Epicurean, but from a Chinese perspective, you know.
Yeah,
So I think we could the Turbo Chat GPT-4 is or GPT-4 Turbo is out. So that gives us the ability to ask a larger framing question. Um, so if you come up with, let's just say, three perspectives that you'd like to run that dream through the gunculator just to see what it might say, that would be an interesting exploration. So as long as it's like
Freud.
a
Would
historical
Freud?
person, as long as it's a historical person that the Chat GPT would find enough information to be able to construct a persona and then
Okay,
have it interpret the dream through the lens of that persona. I think we would have, when we see what that looks like and we see where the second round of questioning goes, um, we might have a really powerful tool for personal development here that would be of use to other folks.
excellent. Will do. And
Yeah,
I'll probably get that to you by tomorrow.
that would be
Um,
cool. That'll be cool because one of the other things that I'm doing, I'm getting ready to start on since I have this open time on my calendar, is to start a hypnosis certification uh, on with a technique called mindscaping, which is about shaping the inner narrative landscape in a principled way to then self-adjust in that direction. So you're a sculptor of your own perspective in that sense. So telescope builder.
yeah,
So if there may be some interesting things that go in this direction, like for instance, I'm on the back burner. I've got this project for 100 shamanistic power animals and what they represent and what they could represent for traders. What could we learn from the power? So if we explore this with human personas for advisors, then the extension into the realm of the power animals could be very interesting because I've already done the background work of examining the qualities of all those animals and what they could do for us in trading. And so there's another project brewing in there somewhere that says, let me answer some questions on a quiz to discover a couple power animals and see what they say about my my risk and my reward of trading. So if I were to describe my own current state of what are the rewards of trading for me and what are the risks of trading for me, now I got to somehow balance that sense. Well, what if I said that to a power animal and that power animal had certain qualities and characteristics and perspectives? How would it look through that lens onto my risk and reward challenges and give me some good questions to reflect on? Because I think that's what our animal would do, is it gives you good questions to think about, for you to think about. So I would see this as part of um, that reflection journal, being able to adopt that outside perspective. And if we could create some of those voices reliably, that would be a very interesting project.
Okay. Yeah, I have very well written out descriptions of both of these dreams because they were crystal clear into my head and kind of drove me nuts for a while there, to be honest with you. So
Yeah.
I think it was part of the reason I got into drugs was to help me sleep and not dream sometimes because I just wanted to be past it. So um, fortunately, the drugs didn't kill me either. So
That's always a good outcome. One of the
yeah.
good outcomes is
I mean, I can
you're,
tell you that in general, I can say drugs and alcohol saved my life because it helped me get through the 80s when I was going around the world asking what the fuck is wrong with me, you know, and it turned out that the drugs and alcohol were part of what was wrong with me, but then I got to the deeper cause and took a few years to get to digging into belief systems and things, and that's where Van ended up being one of the final frontiers on me letting go of all my
yeah.
shit, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
well, I've had some experiences in that area with uh, sensory deprivation tanks, but also, and I'm not going to say drugs because of the statute of limitations, but um, natural herbs in the form of Hawaiian baby wood rose seeds, which have some chemical properties of hallucinogens and psilocybin. So nothing illegal, but certainly extraordinary, that were responsible for visions that are as crystal clear to me today as they were 49 years ago.
wow.
And were foundational for me. So I'm with you on that.
I've seen that Chuck Whitman is also, he had a couple of videos talking
Yeah,
about microdosing and how the
yeah,
benefits of it. And that a year ago he would have said no way, but now
yeah.
he's
He made an interesting turn in 2024 with some of the language that he's using on his websites and some of his Facebook
yeah.
postings.
And
But
I mean, I'm not a follower of Chuck's, but I just happened to see that one
yeah,
video caught my attention. So,
yeah,
um,
I was following him. His particular use of language, I wasn't a fan of, and I stopped following him this week because of that. But it was certainly a change of direction for him.
interesting.
It was the indiscriminate use of the F word that I didn't want to support.
Maybe the
So
microdosing is
yeah,
unleashing a little something in him.
yeah,
Um,
I think there's a little bit of a Tony Robbins style unleashing in that formula that I'm not a fan of,
right.
because I think it's easily. I'm not saying it's contrived in his, because I don't know what's on his mind, but I could see how it could easily become contrived, or could lead one astray if you bought into the vulgarity is power, you know, casting off the chains of civilization and polite society. I think that indiscriminately releasing the hounds has other consequences that outweigh freedom and the feeling of power that you get by, like, it's the same thrill that young adolescent males get at night from committing vandalism. There's
Right.
a certain attraction to that, which I also understand, and which I don't encourage in adults. Should know better, but
All right. So
yeah,
what update on one of the early lessons. I had told you guys about me writing down Kelly Slater's name in the
Yeah.
lesson as a leader. And the very next day, I was in a fairly remote spot on the beach, and he pulled up right behind me. And I I ended up after that conversation, I sent a note to his Woodland Hills, California address, and sure enough, I got a card back from him saying, "Great to meet me at the
Yeah.
beach," and a picture of him on his 1/4 mile long wave pool that makes the perfect wave.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's just kind of cool to get some feedback from that. So this will be a nice little artifact for me to keep with this course material that
How long is the ride on a 1/4 mile wave?
I would
4 minutes?
say, and it depends on the speed of the wave. I'm imagining he
Yeah.
can change that up a little bit, so it might be 25 seconds or
Oh, that
30
fast.
seconds. Yeah,
Oh,
if
because I was
you go
picturing,
quick.
the world record 1/4 mile runner is about 42 seconds. So if he's cooking along at a
Yeah,
40 seconds for a
then it
quarter
must
mile,
be a minute
that's
and a
that.
half because yeah, they're typically traveling at 20 miles an hour or so or less.
Well, that's going to be pretty close. Yeah, that'll be pretty
Yeah,
close
I guess so.
to around a minute plus or minus. That's a that's a that's a long time in the crouch combat ready position.
Yeah, no doubt. And while he can push forward if he wants
Yeah,
to and get to standing up, but
yeah,
the cool thing about this wave is how glassy the water is in front of it and how perfect the curl is over the top. I mean,
yeah,
and people pay $12,000 to get a morning of riding on this wave. And he's got them in Dubai and Texas and California. And just a great guy that he's a super good example and someone that I would want to emulate some of his qualities. So I don't know if he earns a spot on my mental board of directors, a la Think and Grow Rich, but
yeah.
he's a great guy to have in the mix. And
Well,
then,
that might even be one of your, as an example, that might be one of those dream tellers,
yeah, it
dream
could be.
perspectives.
It
You know?
could be. There's plenty of media coverage of him out there in the
Yeah,
world, so they'd be able to put his attitude together, perhaps.
yeah. I think
Um,
what I'll do is on that is I'm gonna craft a psychological profile set of questions and say, hey, Chat GPT, go investigate this guy and create a personality advisor profile after answering these questions about them. Their background, their written material, their spoken, what are they known for? What controversies or points of view, that kind of stuff. And see what we can come up with as a persona, um, as if we were giving an actor some guidance on how to personalize that character. And if we can do that, then we would say, now adopt that persona and then listen to and then interpret and advise on this stream and the places and your reactions to it
I think it'd be
without being,
fascinating
yeah,
to
yeah,
compare the different individuals' responses and see,
yeah.
compare and contrast them as well.
Well, yeah, because at some point, if, a good advisor doesn't tell you what it means, what they're doing is holding up lights and mirrors
Hmm.
and look in the shadows and look in the light and see it from this side and would be adopting a different time frame. They might be giving you inner advice or outer advice. And and any of those are legit and their perspective is probably shaped by their experiences and what they found to be important in life. And so it really should come up with a very wide triangulation of points of view. And then we think that could place the dream inside a much larger theater of the mind to project it on these different screens and from these different mirrors. Much like watching and listening to Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon in the planetarium at Michigan State after midnight
Yeah. There you
back in the day.
go. So I mentioned this as an artifact, and I mentioned Think and Grow Rich, and it made me think about conversations with Kurt over the last couple days, my son, and he mentioned that he was reading that book, and I was able to pull up an artifact which was a mission statement I wrote as a result of that book 60 days before he was born. And I was able to send him a screenshot of that, and it really resonated with him. And because he feels like he's in a struggling position right now, money wise, and he's really not. He's in a good position. He's got great assets, a great house, and a pretty good life, but he's just ambitious, and
Yeah.
trying to keep him excited about that and make sure he maintains consistent effort. So he's in Dallas at a business meeting right now, but
Hey, there's a book I would invite you to read that you might, if you enjoy it, you might share with him. It's by a guy from the 60s named Robert S. DeRope, DeRopp, called The Master Game.
I remember you mentioning that.
Yeah, and it just
Apple Group.
feels like it would resonate with him.
In fact,
he
I
was,
think you mentioned that book was formative with you in
yeah,
your younger years,
yeah, it
right?
really was. It was a guy who he was a Western scientist, but also was exploring uh, chemicals the same way that Leary and was doing, and then also uh, Eastern ways of thought, the way Alan Watts was. And so he sort of distilled a bunch of different reflective disciplines, inner journey disciplines, and sort of found what was the common about all of those. Sort of a non-denominational approach to understanding consciousness through a Western perspective, in the same way that Buddhists might have done that through the Eastern perspectives. And so I found that union of East and West, of science and art, and drugs and not drugs, pretty profound, and it stayed with me forever. I think I've got all the books he ever wrote, but that one really especially spoke to me at a really important time in my life.
I think it's in my saved list on Amazon, so I'll
Yeah.
definitely get it in the mix. I have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 book backlog at the moment, but that's fine. I like having a backlog there. Makes me feel good. One other update real quick is this picture came in the other day, and this is my nephew on the right that we sold or transitioned the animal control business in Detroit to, and he's relocated himself to Florida. He's kind of running that business remotely, but he started gator hunting down here, and we ended up circulating this picture to the greater Atlanta area and said, you can join us for a one-night hunt if anyone's interested, $7,500 one night to go hunt gators with Ben. And we have a waiting list of 50 people that popped up in one day. So who knows? It could end up being another ancillary business, but I don't imagine he's going to be able to get liability insurance for this one. So we'll see how that.
Well, that looks like about 15 feet.
Yeah, I think it was like 13, and then when it hangs like that, it gets a little bit longer. So
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think he got 6 of these in 2 weeks, and they were all about the same size. And if you look at that little boat behind him, it's not very big that they're using there. So he asked me if I wanted to go. I said, no, thank you. Just send pictures, please. So,
That's right. Picture was enough.
and I don't know, gator hunting in Florida is an interesting thing. It's a bit of a sticky wicket because we have 2,500 people moving here a day, and the gators, in the spring, they want their territory. So eventually there'll be some sort of a clash, and who knows, they'll make it easier to hunt them, I guess, at that point. But, the only other screenshot that I have here was from lesson 18. At the end of it, you have one of your standard markups here, and it does
Yep.
talk about talking through this, which I'm happy to do if you'd like me to. I can do it quickly and summarize it. I'm
Yeah.
not.
Well, yeah, the main point of that one was really if you take this as a metaphor for conceptually where you are coming into the station and coming into the, it's getting tougher coming into the dock and then
Uh,
looking beyond resistance. There's a lot of things going on between 2 and 7 or 2 and 8, and to the extent that you can, it's easy to talk about what's happening between 1 to 2 and from 8 to 9. But in this congestion zone, in this traffic circle, there's a lot of things happening. And so that's where the story can go awry. To the extent that you can talk through that routinely and make that a battle drill and just say, hey, this is just a part of the music that we play faster, but it's still well known and it's navigable, and this is just what we do when we're busy, but it's still orderly and there's a logical progression. Time will slow down when you're in that part of the story. And then when you get beyond, it sort of takes on its own. And so there's a sense of pace, yeah, in what's going on. And I'm pretty sure you can explain what all those things are. That I mean, that's if this was a foundations course, I'd grill on this one. In the
yeah.
creativity course, it is about seeing that as the coming into the station, getting ready for the next trip, or getting ready for what? We cross loading cargo, we taking on new passengers, offloading old ones, or is this a way station on the way to 10R or something like that? And what do each of those little checkpoints mean as you're coming in and or getting ready to start? How do those act as control measures and checkpoints and rhythms? That's really the thing to reflect on. And then
Okay.
it's just a trade, but it's also a metaphor for life as well.
Yeah, I like
That's
this chart. So
yeah,
I'll post this in my ready room
yeah,
area because, it's nice to be able to look at it and say, I need to be expecting any of this stuff to happen in a
right.
given. And maybe I'll make my own up too.
And it's a good one for Kurt to think about too, because if he finds himself at 5, you know, he's in a hurry to get through to 7 and on to 9. Yeah, but it could be going towards 6. And if it doesn't hold at 6, it could be going back to 2 and 4. So I know you want to go that way, but there's also resistance that way. And the path of least resistance, there's 2 paths: the path of more resistance and the path of least. What does it want to do? There's some underlying things that haven't been seen yet that maybe makes the path that looks harder easier or better because we haven't seen what's underneath yet. So, when you feel that sense of urgency and wanting to hurry up, maybe that's the time to slow down and appreciate it and zoom in a little bit more, but without losing sight of the far havens, so to speak. So there's a
And
lot of there's a lot of points on that one.
lesson 18 talks about internal strife, and we could talk about buyers versus sellers as internal strife in the market in a different way. But
Yeah.
this lesson helps to sort out, that there is actually good strife out there, and productive, that forces people to be better. And I had some people when I was in business that I competed with down the road, and we were friendly and we traveled together, and it helped both of us through our careers. Um, and, theoretically, even Joe said it on inauguration day that it's healthy to have two parties to keep each other accountable and going forward.
Yep.
However, what they say and what they do are two different things. And
Yeah.
that was a moment of clarity on day one that we haven't seen much of since. But
Yeah.
um,
Well, what's key on that one is location number 6. Because if you think about that as a narrative, something unusual happened at 6. Okay, from 1, it couldn't break through the blue. And then it sold off to 2 and recovered at 2 twice. And then at 3, it made a decision to go north. Awesome. And it ran straight up to 7 and bounced. So at 5, we could cash. And then it fell back to 6. And then for reasons unknown to us, it held at 6, and 6 is higher than 4. And it's closer to 7 than it is to 4. And it resumed. So whatever happened to the decision makers at 6, they decided to buy it at 6 with enough power that it got through 7 this time, whereas the last 2 times it didn't. At 3, it went to the blue and failed to 5, where we got out, and it failed another step to 6, which made 5 look smart. And way back at 1, after knocking on that door, it couldn't, and it failed all the way to 2. So something happened at 6 that was a change in perspective that made us find enough power to get through 7 this time on the 3rd try. That's the 3rd try. It tried at 1, it couldn't, it failed. It went recovery at 2 and then 3, and then it failed. Couldn't get up into 7. But at 6, they stopped it. It didn't go all the way back to 4. And there was enough new energy that this time it got through 7, and it feels like it was enough that we could, having taken a risk at 8, we could now get our risk out. And now it's a science project at 9. Because the worst thing that happens to us is that we made a little bit of money on the far side of resistance. So we've actually made measurable progress in the life cycle of this thing. Now, I don't know how far it's going to go, because that's what life is like. But there was something important that happened at 6 that we cannot explain and don't have to explain. And if you try to explain it, you're focusing on the wrong thing. You should be looking at, where's my red line going next? And at what point do I raise the red line as it goes past 9? Maybe when the market is closed, I can go try to investigate the hidden reason why it held support at 6 when it didn't have to. That was a surprising moment. And there was enough energy there to take it through 7 this time. So that's the kind of, the feeling about what those numbers mean. That what made it different at 6 that wasn't there? It was probably the same kind of thing that happened at 2. Only this time it happened at 6 instead of 2. Why didn't it come from 5? Why didn't it come all the way back through 3 and then to 2 like it did last time? Why did it choose to go only 1/3 of the way back to 6 and then reverse? That difference, without even knowing why, feels significant, because it held in the top third of that channel between 2 and 7. And then that reversal, when it gets through 7, That's new information. Bang, I'm on it. And then the stop at 8 lets me get out of that thing before it ever goes all the way back to 6 anyway. It gives it enough room so that if it does fall back through blue, I've given it a little bit of room to wiggle. But in this case, it just went all the way through, so I don't have to wait any longer, 5 or 6 bars, and it had no sign of failing. So I don't need to wait any longer to see an opportunity to lock it in. So that's sort of the narrative of the. If I was writing the tale of Ganji, the tale of, you know, the hero's journey on this one. That's 6 is a key moment. Failure to fail further. 5 was failure to follow through. 6 was failure to fail further, and it reversed quick. So that's what makes 6 interesting to me. So,
Good stuff. Yeah. And I am currently work in progress, trying to give myself, be a little more patient with adjusting my stops, because I'm getting a little too tight when I adjust my stops. I need to give them a little more breathing room. And someone asked the question in the last couple of days, it really made me think. And it said, are you locking in profit just because you need to feel the victory of the trade, or are you actually managing your risk? And that question helps me to maybe give it a couple more bars of breathing room, and perhaps even dial it down on the volatility of the stocks I'm trading too on some of these. So
I
working.
have been trying to express my feelings about why to adjust the stop. And it has something to do, I think, with like that chapter of the story is over. It made it through, and now the adventure is continuing on into new lands. But I want to respect that moment by locking it in and saying, "Hey, I got to closure on that leg. That no matter what else happens with that story, it had moved far enough to justify locking in that piece, and I learned that lesson, or could make a claim, or you know that kind of thing, as opposed to, well, I'm afraid of losing money or what. No, it felt like in the narrative of that trade, like it got through 7, so with risk at 8 and onward towards 9, it made enough of a move at 9 to justify making that bold move up and locking in the piece. It just like, dude, I'm acknowledging that that's what happened with price, and I'm going to declare that money is mine now, and just be satisfied that I had
Yeah.
that much evidence made it. And so if I move that red line halfway closer to that single dot up there, which is where the next bar was opening. See, there's a tall bar, and
Yeah.
then there was a gap. So when that thing actually gapped up, yeah, right there. Now, if I move, it's still not quite a full R, that gap up. So if I move the red line halfway towards that, it doesn't really make a significant difference on the gains. What's significant about moving it up was that I'm not losing money on that trade. So how far up do I have to move it so that I feel like the money that I earned was enough to be able to say, yep, no lose plus dinner for 2, and no further, that I'm still giving it as much room to find its way as possible while still preserving no lose plus dinner for 2. So otherwise, I'd say, well, just take the win. Well, no, I don't want to prematurely. I want to let the tree grow. I want to give it as much room to grow without choking it out. You know, um, so I'm trying to take that kind of almost the holistic gardener thinking longer term towards the harvest and where this thing could go, because it's still early days on that trade. it's only 2.5 hours into that trade. There's still 4 more hours, twice as much time to the right as there was from the thick blue line to the current level. That represents 1/3 of the trading day so far. And we're just starting to make that move above resistance, which was
Right.
so significant. I still got 2/3 of the day to go. And as long as I'm not going to lose any money on this trade, I can afford to give it some room to grow. So that's why that stop is not any closer than it is. I'm trying to give it maximum room to grow. So
Yeah, and you've got sort of a measured move there to assume that you've got a second leg here that probably
right.
has another 50 cents easy in it.
Yeah.
The
If
other
this,
good thing,
leg two, leg two is as big as leg one, and it's just starting leg three. Like if it holds here at 9, and then I would say leg two is from 6 to 9, locked in. I would just declare
yeah,
that's as the move from 2 to 5 is as big as the move from 6 to 9. So I
mhm.
think there's one more of those in there. Or I can just go and say, let me add a range stat from 2 to see what the upper limit of this thing would still be. And I don't know what the range stat was on it that day, but that's I'm giving it maximum room to achieve the third leg is what I'm
So the other good thing about this chart for me is patience to, waiting from 5 to 7.
saying.
It's a very good entry, and one thing that has helped me with getting stopped out is being okay to re-enter right away if the trade resumes and starts working again. That's been good, but I don't necessarily wait long enough if I'm really in and I want to be in. And so my internal discussion gets going, and something like this says, no, wait for the right level, Joe. Be logical here. Don't be too anticipatory. This is a good measured chart that I might try to copy it using some other symbols that I'm in, and I'll do what you said, share those with Kurt as well for discussion. So I still am going to work on 18 a little bit, and I'll come up with a question or two for you on 17, but I will start to move forward then. And having said all this, I will say aho at 9:01.
Yeah. Sounds like a plan. And let's see what I got is my systems certification starts Thursday. I have my second of 3 sessions with the lady who does the tips. I will have a product for us pretty soon. That's a tips booklet. It is the built out job book of about 65 or 75 important elements of our basic trading toolkit with something intelligent to say about each one in a declarative sentence, a short paragraph, a picture that illustrates, maybe a white paper that explains, and an example trade. And then that leads to a lesson or a TED talk to illustrate it more deeply in the same way that the Foundation's Q&A and this one end up becoming extended stories with examples. And then we built out an assessment tool that brings together 2 dimensions. On one dimension, I would ask you a set of questions about think about trading from yourself vis-a-vis a member of a team or an organization. So I've got that individual versus group continuum from west to east. And then a um, a thinking versus feeling continuum north to south, where systems thinking as a technical thinking curriculum is up there. And then true storytelling as a feeling of safety, trust, truth, and opportunity, the feeling of trading, the sense making of it is there. So I would ask, we can ask questions about where are you in your competencies? Which of the competencies feel the most important? Or from this list of competencies, how important does it feel? And then how satisfied are you that you're competent in that area? So if I had something that was high importance and high confidence, then I'm good. It's an important thing and I'm good at it. Hey, no, this thing is important, but I'm not good at it yet. Oh, it's going to be a high priority. Hey, this competency doesn't feel all that important, but man, I feel like I'm overtrained or I'm spending too much time on it. Okay, so now I'm dithering. I'm avoiding something by going trying to get better at something that I'm already good at, good enough, and it's not that important. So why am I spending resources in that area for self-development? Because I like it? Because it makes me feel smart when I could be reallocating the resource towards a higher importance thing that I am less confident with. So so if we take that list of there's going to be a list of skills that come out of systems thinking and true storytelling. And those skills are going to be associated with self and as a member of a group. And those things will be expressed across the plan, prepare, execute, assess phases. So now all of a sudden, there's going to be things that we can do at the intersection of all those. In the planning phase, there's some things that I feel comfortable with planning and for myself, but not for a team. We're uncomfortable with it. So there will be some risk and reward in there. I'm going to try to get these two, draw the magnet with the two poles, you know, the attraction and the repulsion. And then, so, and try to use that as a way to say, let me use that as a diagnostic tool for a guy to find where he is. And then inside that ecosystem of skills that we have, and then we can say, now I'm going to work on some things that I really want to get better at because of the reward. Now here's some things that are important that I'm not good at, which are risky because I'm not good. So now I can get better at those. And now we have a way to just sort of characterize and prioritize the different training skills, what to work on next in my professional development. So that becomes sort of a guide. If we think of the magnetic compass as being able to guide us in the magnetic navigation through the ocean at night and the stars, whatever, that now becomes a way to start mapping our journey uh, towards mastery. So that whole image came into my mind today, fully formed in that little session I did with this gal with Tom Hardison. So, and I was working with Kim Hirschberger at VTI about replacing or updating Van's trader test, because that thing sort of, you could take that test and then that would lead you towards, workshops or training of a certain type. And I wanted to have something that would allow us to get an integrated look at where we are and what we have to do. And so I could use that as a tool to give people a sense of what should we be working on next as part of their own self-development. So a week from now, I should have something very useful on that because I owe her something, the first cut of the first third of that by Thursday. So that's my other part of this work in progress is the integration of systems thinking and true storytelling. Those I see as the heads and tails of the complete trader package. So there we are. So aho to that. More to follow.
Sounds exciting and useful.
All right,
Extremely
man.
useful.
So I sent you DeRope's book. I
Yeah, I
found the
saw that.
PDF version of that.
Excellent.
I'm gonna probably spend some time reading that instead of doing other work. As a refresher to see how well I remember all the things that I read back
Yeah,
then.
I could actually read that because all these other books are physical, so that one will
Yeah,
be my web distraction, and I'll push
yeah,
through it while I'm doing
yeah.
the
There you
others.
are. There you are. All right, boss. We will see you later, and we'll get this recording posted in there in the usual spot. And
Thanks, Ken. See you in a
yep,
few.
yep, yep. Take good care.